ओके मेरे दोस्तों, आप सुन रहे हैं फीवर एफएम। मेरा नाम तमरेज़ खान है और we're here in Together We Can project में. As I've been explaining to you people, we have a young lady here called Emma May, and she is a focused intervention worker for Forward Leeds. What we are here really is Forward Leeds, sports adults and young people to make healthy choices about alcohol and drugs. It is Britain's second biggest multi-agency project to tackle alcohol and drugs.
That's right.
All right, okay. They have 3 main centres across Leeds as well, and a recovery centre called Five Ways. Can you please explain to me exactly what you do and how long have you been going with this?
Yeah, sure. So Forward Leeds started July 2015, so we've been going nearly 6.5 years now. We see anyone around any kind of substance or alcohol use. We'll see any age as well. So we've got a young person's team that'll see people from 10 upwards, and we don't have an upper age limit either. So I know the eldest client I've had is 85.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll see any kind of substance if people feel that it's an issue. There's no lower limit on how much someone uses. And then you've mentioned 5 Ways Aware as well. That's our aftercare service.
I see, yeah.
And so that's for people who have stopped, who are wanting to kind of remain abstinent. They can access sites like a community centre.
Right. I mean, alcohol and drug use is basically, everyone, just about everyone. You hear it, you see it, and, people are doing it. Can you tell me what the benefits are or what are the harms really?
Okay. So, I mean, specifically around alcohol, we see a lot of people coming in where it's impacted the health an awful lot, especially the physical health. And
right.
I think people don't really understand that it can affect you literally from head to toe, nearly everything around the body. So we see people where it's impacted the physical health, mental health, relationships, finances. And then if you're looking at other substances as well, specifically things like heroin, people can end up kind of on the street and it can cause some criminality as well. But I mean, more specifically around alcohol, when people are doing well and they've made those positive changes, you can see the difference just in the skin, in the hair, almost immediately.
Alcohol, normal people drink it for celebrations and, having a good time, going out and having a glass or two of wine and things like that. When is it really that you realize that, this is too much for someone? How do you see it yourself or do you feel it? Or
I think the first time people realise is probably when someone else points it out.
Right.
But you might realise yourself if you're finding that you can't just leave one beer on the fridge. You feel that you have to kind of finish everything that you've got. If you find that you're drinking alone more and it's starting to become a daily thing, if you're noticing that it's having an impact on some of the relationships around you, people are kind of saying, well, we're worried about you and what you're doing. It might be a good idea to listen to what people are saying. I think we're doing Alcohol Awareness Week next week.
Right.
And that's specifically around relationships. And it's usually relationships are when things start getting affected. It's other people, loved ones that tend to tell you first.
Right. And is it, what I hear is that it is because of the loved ones. It drives some people to drinking excessively. Is that true?
That's a really interesting question. I wouldn't say so,
Right.
but I'm sure there's quite a few of our clients that would kind of say differently. I think if people need to take responsibility for the choices that they make.
Of course, yes.
And blaming things like relationships can be a bit of a get out for some people. But however, if you're going into things like domestic abuse and the impact that has on your mental health, some people do use alcohol as a bit of a coping mechanism.
And does that help, with their coping of it, or is it just false?
It helps in the short term.
Right.
So the effects of alcohol will probably help you feel a little bit better for a couple of hours.
Oh,
but then
just hours, yeah.
Yeah, but then, when you start looking at some of the long-term consequences of the impact on your physical health, your mental health, your finances, your relationships, it can then just spiral and make that worse. So if you keep using alcohol to try and control your mental health, you'll find that you're going to find it hard to cope with things like stress, and you're going to find it harder to just cope with things that are coming up. You forget about it, you'll drink it away rather than actually try to deal with things and manage
The
it.
problems, I suppose, they don't go away, they just sort of delayed a little bit.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly right.
How big a problem is? Is there any figures that, how many sort of people are really affected by this in UK?
I mean, alcohol is one of the biggest referrals we get into the service.
All right.
So out of all the substances that we do see at Forward Leeds, alcohol referrals tend to be the biggest one, definitely over 50%. I think, alcohol is quite a big part of a lot of British cultures, in which, like you say, it's used to celebrate, it's used to commiserate, it's used for almost everything.
Of course, yes.
And you only have to walk into a supermarket like Tesco's, and you're met with a wall of beer for any excuse, like a barbecue or Christmas or anything like that, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's glamorized as well, isn't it, really? I've just been sort of building up to this show and playing some songs, and there's loads and loads of songs available, and they all seem to be glamorizing it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not here to say that alcohol's evil. It's, that people do get pleasure from it, and it is something that people do socially. But if you're kind of using it to cope with things like your mental health issues or all like that, this is where issues start to kind of come up. If you're doing it daily, it shouldn't be the only thing that you use to socialise either.
Yes. Emma, can you tell me that, does it sort of depend on different people how much they can take on their body, or, is there a limit that, this is excessive now?
So, I mean, the guidelines that are given by the government of alcohol consumption are 14 units over 7 days with 2 alcohol-free days. So, for example, 1 unit is around half a pint of normal lager.
All right.
Or a 35ml shot of a spirit like whiskey, or a small glass of wine. That's 1 unit. So it doesn't seem an awful lot. So when you think of 14 units, you're looking at around 7 pints.
That's spread throughout the week.
Through the week, yeah. The reason they kind of give that as a guideline is that as you start kind of going more than 14 units, it will have a negative impact on your physical health. So, I mean, that's the guidelines. I suppose as you drink more and more, your dependency grows. So where people may feel that alcohol, they can take a lot and not cause damage, they might not realise actually that building a tolerance for it. Their body's becoming more used to it, and they may not see some of the damage that's happening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you often see people walking down to, say, for example, Ellen Road from the train station, and you can tell, they've had all the 14 units there just in one go.
Yeah. I talk about the 14 units with a lot of people, and a lot of people feel it's very unrealistic in what they do in their normal lives, and I can see why.
But there is the safe limit that is, spread over so many days.
Yeah.
And obviously, can you please tell me, give us an example, the worst case scenario you've seen, somebody's come to you for help. What sort of state have they been, mental or physical or...
So we do regularly see people who are physically dependent to alcohol. So what that means is that if they were to stop drinking, they will have an alcohol withdrawal where they will have shakes and sweats, and in very extreme cases end up having a seizure.
Really?
And ending up in hospital. That can lead to severe impacts on mental health. It can cause damage to the brain, and it can lead to someone dying. So it is very serious if someone is physically dependent to alcohol. And we do see people, I think I'm more surprised when someone comes to our service. They blow on our breathalyzer, very similar to what the police use. They'll blow 120, but will be sat in front of me and seem very, very sober. And that's quite surprising.
Really?
That's 4 times above the legal drive limit.
Yes, yeah.
And that's quite surprising that someone can be that tolerant of alcohol.
Now then, what is the trend for the young people nowadays? Obviously it's publicized a lot, and young people are, they're looking at all these sort of things from the different aspects of what we used to do. What's their thinking?
Statistically, there's less young people drinking.
Okay.
Statistically, it's not something that young people go towards nowadays. But young people still drink to excess. So we have kind of developed like a game, an interactive game that people can use called Decide the Night.
Do tell us about that, please.
Yeah, Decide the Night. So it's like your older listeners might remember Choose Your Own Adventure books. Where you kind of pick a page and you can choose your own adventure. It's very similar to that,
right.
Where people kind of can choose their night. They start with a particular drink. We've got 6 different scenarios, and they can choose what they do through the night and whether they have a great night and end up home safe, or they have a little too much and maybe get embarrassed because they're being videoed vomiting all over the place, and having to leave the night early because they're ending up in A&E. So there's 6 scenarios. We've developed this with young people as well. They've come up with the scenarios, so they're quite realistic. They are from a young person's perspective. And I had my nephew play it, and he managed to get through the night.
Right.
My sister, not so much. But yeah, they played it and they found it an awful lot of fun.
So what actually happens, while you're playing the game? Does it sort of take your mind away from the drink or something like that? Or?
No, so the scenarios are just things like meeting up with your friends in the park, someone's brought some vodka with them, and it's just what you do on that night out. If you have a little bit, how you feel about that, having more, drinking to excess, and then having to kind of maybe end up in A&E because you've had a fall, or do you go and get something to eat when your friends get something to eat? Do you kind of decide that you're going to stick with your mate who might be unwell rather than going off and drinking more? So people get to choose what they do.
All right. Okay. That sounds very, very interesting, really. Now then, as you know, this is Fever FM. We are really, really primarily sort of broadcasting for our Asian community. Can you tell me about them? What sort of, how many people or what sort of figures are there really? People with this alcohol problem or drug abuse and all that?
I've looked specifically kind of at alcohol. And around everyone we see around alcohol, 2.5% are from South Asian communities.
2.5%.
Yeah, out of everyone we see at Forward Leeds around alcohol, and it's quite a large number. So yeah, about 2.5% we see are from South Asian communities. It is something we do try and engage people. We've done events at Hamara, for example. We've found with COVID lockdown, switching an awful lot of appointments to telephone appointments, we're engaging more people. There's an awful lot more anonymity to it. They don't have to walk into the hub and fear being seen. So we're finding, telephone consultations seem to be getting people in a bit more.
Do you think there is a problem in itself, really? Because, in parts of our culture, it is a taboo subject. People don't talk about it openly. And people they have a drink, they do have a problem, but they're ashamed in a way to speak out about it or seek any help.
There's an awful lot of stigma around having issues with alcohol. And a lot of people struggle to come to us, especially just for the first time. But we are a service that is non-judgmental. We're here to help. We're not here to judge. And if people feel that they can't come see us in person because they're worried about what might happen, they can pick up a phone, they can go online on our website, refer themselves. That initial referral can be really challenging for someone. So we try and make it as easy as possible for people.
Oh, that's good. And, I really also want to touch on the other drugs as well, really.
Yeah.
There's some really, really nasty ones about,
Yeah.
People trading in there. You go up the road here openly, people are doing all that sort of thing. And obviously that does the harm. And does that have similar sort of effects as alcohol?
Yeah, I think We find alcohol probably impacts health an awful lot. Around other substances, depending on the substance, it can be the lifestyle that impacts on the health more than the substance itself. So we see, I mean, the biggest kind of cohort of people we see is heroin users. And then after that, we see a lot of cocaine and cannabis. And I think cocaine, we're seeing quite a lot of health impact coming from that. It usually comes hand in hand with alcohol. For some reason, the two go together. They're like fish and chips. They just go really well. Cannabis, we see more issues around, similar to what you get with smoking, maybe some mental health issues as well. Things like heroin, it's the lifestyle that can be the issue. And then things like injecting injuries. And if people are using heroin, they're usually using crack as well. And
really?
Again, that has some physical health impact, especially if they're smoking, and injecting as well is very bad. And that's where the health implications come from.
So combination of a lot of drugs being used at the same time, is it?
Oh, yeah. People tend not to just use one. It tends to be a few.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. You see people, especially younger people nowadays, going into city centre, enjoying having a drink and whatever. Is that sort of thing necessary for people,
I think we're seeing an increase in people using cocaine use as they're drinking. And I kind of get why people do it.
Why do they do it?
Interesting. So when you're drinking, a bit of cocaine kind of sobers you up a little bit.
Right.
Gives you a bit of a buzz. You can carry on drinking. Then as you're starting to kind of feel a bit drunk again, a bit more cocaine, kind of pep you up a little bit, make you feel quite confident about the night out, probably kind of lowers inhibitions a little bit. You want to kind of have a dance and things like that. And that'll go on through the night. So a lot of people kind of use cocaine to try and get the night to last a bit longer. And this is why they both go so well together. But
what is the immediate effect of it? When they sort of go home at night time in the morning, what's their next day like?
Oh, they crash.
Really?
It's not a very pleasant feeling. So you've got the hangover, and you, with cocaine, the crash can come a couple of days afterwards as well. And it's just, I describe it as like a credit card. So cocaine is a stimulant. It kind of increases your energy, increases your confidence, increases your good mood. But then you have to pay that back with interest. So when you crash, you kind of feel lower, and you feel a lot more lethargic and tired, and you can't do anything.
So obviously that must affect their job and whatever they're doing next day and things like that. And is that how they get into sort of, financial trouble as well?
It can do. We do find with a lot of our cocaine users that debt is a big issue. And it's something that we talk about within sessions as well. Cocaine tends to be quite expensive. Yeah. So, and it's quite a moreish drug that people want to use over and over again. It's not something necessarily you can boundary yourself with if you are starting to kind of use on a daily basis. So yeah, we do find that people have financial impact of that. It does impact on people's work because it'll impact on the mental health. Things like driving, if you shouldn't be driving, if you're under the influence, and so that can kind of then lead to criminal implications. Yeah, it's not the best one. Cocaine's quite a tricky one to kind of for people coming into treatment as well. There's no quick fix to solve the problem, and I think that's what people hope for.
That was going to be my next question. How easy is it to get fixed, really? Do people respond to the treatment, or what do they have to do?
So the treatment we offer at Forward Leeds, specifically around kind of cocaine, is more what we call psychosocial intervention. So it's more around talking about what goes on and putting boundaries in place and trying to manage a reduction. There isn't really anything to substitute for it. And we encourage things like mutual aid groups, so the 12-step or SMART.
What is that 12-step?
12-step, so you might have heard of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Right, yeah.
They've also got Narcotics Anonymous, Cocaine Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, and Marijuana Anonymous. And we call them 12-step because they're for a 12-step program or a fellowship. And then SMART is a little bit different, and that's around that's one group, and it encompasses drugs, alcohol, gambling, food, everything.
Obviously, you must see a lot of people recuperating, and
definitely.
living a normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Any idea of what percentage do succeed, or how many try, how many want to sort of go on the right path?
We get a lot of people coming through who make it out the other side.
Right.
So around definitely over 40% of the people we see around drugs and alcohol are kind of coming out and recovering. A lot of people can kind of do that and never need to come back.
All right.
And the improvements that they have around the mental health and the physical health, it seems to work really well.